So the other day I sailed and I realized during that sail that after 6.5 months of my boat not moving that my propeller was pretty much non-functional. Full throttle, I was getting only about 2 knots of speed out of the sailboat versus the 6 to 7 knots that I can get when the propeller's clean. In which case, I need to go in the water and clean this propeller. And I'm going to do it on breath hold. I've done it before, but I need to do it now. There's less growth on the bottom of the boat than I anticipated there would be after being 6 months without moving, but there's also still a good amount, and there's legitimate life down here. There's mussels. There's also all sorts of other things. There's little sponges that have been growing. There's clams. There's life has decided that my boat is an artificial reef, and unfortunate for them, I don't pick up hitchhikers in the sea, so they have got to go. But I'm not going to do that whole thing right now. I'm tired from the previous sail, and the most important thing for me to do right now is clean the propeller so that I can correctly maneuver and operate the boat and know that I'll be able to rely on it if I'm put in a dangerous situation in which I need the propeller. These black strands and clumps are clumps of mussels that are growing on the boat, baby mussels. So if I were to leave those and let them grow, I guess eventually you could eat them if you want it. I think it'd be kind of gross to eat them considering they're growing on the bottom of a boat in a harbor, but in theory, I guess you could. I seem to find an unending well of perspective from sailing. The fact that sailing used to be the main, if not only, transportation across the sea. I mean, you could row, but you sailed. There wasn't, before the steam engine, you had to sail everywhere or take a horse and carriage. But if you wanted to go in the water, you had to sail. Something I've learned since I've been sailing in the Mediterranean is that the forecasts are not right. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're dependable, but many times they are not completely dependable. To me, it seems that forecasts are much more dependable out in open sea than they are around land. The reason for that is geography. Wind is the movement of tiny air particles, and those air particles interact with the land masses and the temperature changes and everything that happens in the real world, and some of that can be predicted and forecasted via computer models. But some of it is just too complicated and specific to locations. And I've found that specifically in the Mediterranean and specifically around Greece. And I think that's because Greece has a lot of mountainous coastlines, and those mountains then really disrupt the way that wind moves and disrupt the forecast and create a system of weather that is not what the big scale forecast would think. They're not always inaccurate. They're accurate a good amount of the time, but I found that specific places in Greece, the weather forecasts are never right, and that it's better to sit and watch the weather for a week or two and understand how the weather moves than to rely on the forecast, because a lot of places, like for example here near Volos in this strait in between Avia and the mainland Greece, the weather is pretty consistent in how it blows. It almost always blows from the northeast, and it almost blows every day. But if you look at the forecasts, it'll tell you different things. And there's many different times that I've looked at the forecast for this area, and the forecast says that right now there's zero wind and it's blowing 18 knots. Because of that, because I've been in this area for a long time and I've watched the weather, I know that there's no wind forecasted for today, but the wind is blowing right now, so it will probably blow to sunset, if not through into the night, and then it'll most likely be calm in the morning. It used to be you had to put in a lot of physical effort to get somewhere. If you were in the water and you wanted to go to windward, you either rowed and used manpower to get to windward, or you waited for a weather window in which the weather was favorable and you could sail downwind, or you beat to windward. And that used to be how it worked. People just had to slog through climbing the hill. They had to really work to get where they wanted to go. I enjoy watching tankers and big ships move through the water while I'm sailing, because sailing my boat is just so slow. Like max I'm going to be going is 7 knots. A ship like this is doing probably, they're going into a current, so maybe they're doing about 15, 16 knots. And then you've got this big ferry. It's carrying a dozen cars, more, 20 cars, who knows how many cars it's carrying, and tons of people. And it's going with the current, so it's probably going 23, 24 knots. In this shot here where they're passing each other, you can really get a sense of how fast that ferry is moving. The wind is lightening up. So right now it's only blowing about 10, 11 knots, opposed to when I left it was about 18, and then it was a steady 15, 16 for a while. Now it's lightening up to about 11, 10. So going slower because of that, but then also we're fighting a current. I'm not sure exactly how fast it is, but I really felt it when I was in the water cleaning the propeller. It's been 2.5 hours. And in the direction that I'm wanting to go, really have only made 3-4 miles. So that's the speed over ground versus as the crow flies, it's only about 7 miles to where I'm wanting to go. Something that I find confusing is that I'm sailing to windward, I'm beating windward, and many people would just motor. And there's many times where I've done that, where I just turn on the motor and decide I'm not sailing today, I don't have the time, I don't want to deal with it, I'm just gonna motor through it. I've done that before. But I think what I've never done is been going downwind, perfectly downwind, and not sailed, instead decided to motor. And that's what all of these sailboats are doing. As I'm beating windward, I pass 8 different sailboats, some of them catamarans, some of them monohulls, and all of them are motoring downwind while I'm beating windward. What I assume is that they are charter boats, and so for whatever reason they don't sail, but it doesn't make sense to me. Why would you motor downwind and waste the fuel, waste the money, when you could sail just as fast? Sure, it takes more work to sail, but if you're sailing downwind, once you get the sails set, you're pretty much good to go. You don't have to do a whole lot of work, especially in a place like this where the wind is consistent. It's not changing directions. I guess if they're charter, maybe they don't know how to sail and they just rent the sailboats because of the aesthetic of taking a vacation on a sailboat. I don't know. It's something I don't really understand. I find it confusing. What do you think? Why do you think these boats are motoring downwind? It used to be going someplace was a big effort. It wasn't just you get in the car and you drive there, or you get in the boat and you turn on the engine and you go there, or you get in a bus or a ferry or a plane and then you appear there and you're able to sleep the whole time. Now traveling is accessible. Thought about the modern way of travel a lot, and I used to travel a lot by airplane. I stopped traveling by airplane when I got my van. Since I got my van, I've only taken a few flights. And one of the reasons for that is I like the actual aspect of traveling, of moving your person, being responsible for moving yourself from place to place, opposed to just having wherever you're going there, seeing the sights and doing whatever it is you decide to do in your destination during your holiday, during your vagabond experience or whatever, instead of looking at the destinations as the fun part of travel and then the traveling as a pain in the butt. When you're able to take on the responsibility of moving your person from place to place, whether that's in a van, walking, sailing, riding a horse, kayaking, however you want to do it, when you're responsible for moving yourself, there's value in that. One clear one is the satisfaction that you get when you arrive to wherever it was that you're going. You know that you got there on your own power. You know that you did it yourself to whatever degree you did it yourself. And there's a satisfaction when you arrive. But it also makes the getting there a whole adventure. Not that taking public transport and taking planes, trains, and buses and all those things, that's an adventure too. And I've had a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff. But when you take it on yourself to get yourself from point A to point B, you need a set of skills in order to do that. So That's always fun because you have to learn something new and you have to gain the confidence in order to be able to do that. But then you also get the adventure that comes with that, whatever that is. With sailing, it's very straightforward, going from point A to point B, and the obstacle is the sea, the wind, and the weather. That immediately turns it into an adventure. And so I find that rounds out the experience, because when you get there, you're satisfied just to have arrived. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, subscribe and share the video with a friend. And if you really like what I'm putting out on this channel, then consider supporting on Patreon. I very much appreciate all of you patrons. Big love. Have a great week.